Vault 112 is one of the strangest and most disturbing vaults in the entire network created by Vault-Tec. Unlike other experiments that tested human endurance, resource deprivation, or the effects of long-term isolation, Vault 112 was never about survival in the physical sense. Its purpose was not to study how people would rebuild after nuclear war, nor was it to ensure the continuation of the species. Vault 112's goal was far darker, its purpose twisted by the man who designed it. Beneath a nondescript building on the Capitol Wasteland's surface, Smith Casey's garage Vault 112 lay hidden, almost invisible to the world above. To the casual wanderer, the garage was nothing more than a forgotten relic of pre-war America, its doors rusted and its tools long useless. But below it rested a chamber of pods, each one holding a body, each one feeding a mind into a simulation controlled entirely by one man, Dr. Stanislaus Braun. Vault 112 wasn't built to protect its people. It was built to imprison them. Unlike most vaults, which were designed to house hundreds, sometimes thousands of residents, Vault 112 was built with only 85 pods. No vast living quarters, no hydroponic farms, no workshops or classrooms. Just a single chamber of simulation pods, each one designed to sustain a person indefinitely. Every bodily function would be taken care of while the subject lay trapped inside, their mind projected into an artificial world. According to Vault-Tec, the experiment was meant to test the psychological effects of permanent life within a simulated environment. Would humans adapt to an endless virtual reality? Would they remain stable? Or would madness creep in when the line between reality and illusion dissolved? On paper, that was the purpose, but the reality was far different. Vault 112 was not overseen by a typical bureaucratic overseer, nor was it left to run automatically like some of the other more passive experiments. Vault 112 was built around one man, Dr. Stanislaus Braun, the brilliant, arrogant, and deeply disturbed scientist who had pioneered the very simulation technology that powered the vault. Vault 112 wasn't just his assignment, it was his creation, his playground, and ultimately, his kingdom. Dr. Stanislaus Braun. Before the Great War, Braun was among Vault-Tec's leading scientists, credited with revolutionary work in virtual reality. His pods were the cutting edge of simulation technology so advanced that they could mimic every detail of human experience. For the user, there was no distinction between reality and the virtual. A laugh, a touch, even pain and death all felt exactly as they would in the real world. Braun's genius, however, was matched by his cruelty. Obsessed with control and driven by a god complex, Braun had little interest in using his inventions for training or therapy. He wanted power, absolute power, and Vault 112 gave it to him. As overseer, Braun was the sole authority within the vault. Unlike other experiments that had conditions, protocols, or objectives beyond the whims of those in charge, Vault 112's only real purpose was to give Braun free rein. The residents of the vault were placed in the pods not for study, but for his amusement. Stripped of their pasts, their memories, even their true selves, they became toys in Braun's endless game. The pods and the prison. To walk into Vault 112 was to see silence and stillness. Rows of pods lined the chamber, each one containing a person whose body remained motionless, their mind lost elsewhere. The pods provided all sustenance, recycling bodily waste, feeding nutrients, and keeping their occupants in perfect stasis. To the outside observer, they looked like lifeless shells, frozen forever. But inside their minds, the residents lived, or at least they thought they did. The simulation, constructed by Braun, was known as Tranquility Lane. It was a neighborhood modeled after a pristine 1950s American suburb. Manicured lawns, neat white fences, smiling neighbors, and an innocence that seemed frozen in time. To the inhabitants, this was their world. They awoke in their homes, greeted one another with polite smiles, and carried out daily routines. Their memories of any life before were gone, erased by the system. To them, Tranquility Lane was real, but it wasn't. Every detail, every character, every rule of existence was at the mercy of Braun, who inserted himself into the simulation under various disguises. His favorite was that of a little girl named Betty. In this form, he was omnipotent, able to bend the world to his will, and the residents of Tranquility Lane had no choice but to obey. Life in Tranquility Lane. For the residents of Vault 112, life was a paradox. On the surface it was pleasant, even idyllic. But beneath that thin veneer, everything was controlled. There was no freedom, no true choice. When Braun wished it, they smiled and lived their happy suburban lives. When he grew bored, he twisted their world into torment. Braun's games could be subtle or overt. Sometimes he imposed strange rules, ordering residents to act cruelly toward one another, punishing them if they resisted. Other times, he demanded acts of outright violence. One of his most infamous games was the Tranquility Lane Massacre, where he compelled participants to murder their neighbors one by one, testing how far he could push them before their fabricated morality broke. For the residents, there was no escape. Death in Tranquility Lane did not free them. Instead, they were simply reset, brought back to endure Braun's next experiment. Over and over, they were made to suffer, their very humanity stripped away until they existed only as pawns for Braun's amusement. It was a cruel eternity, hidden beneath the wasteland in a vault few even knew existed. The lone wanderer's arrival. Vault 112 might have remained forever lost, its residents doomed to an endless cycle of manipulation, if not for the events set into motion in Fallout 3. When the lone wanderer pursued their father James across the capital wasteland, the trail eventually led to Smith Casey's garage. Inside, the wanderer discovered the hidden entrance to Vault 112. What awaited them was unlike anything they had seen before. The chamber of pods was eerily quiet, each one filled with an unconscious body. James was among them, trapped inside the simulation. To follow him, the wanderer entered one of the vacant pods. Moments later, they awoke in Tranquility Lane. At first, it seemed like an odd but harmless place, an anachronistic neighborhood out of time. But it quickly became clear that something was wrong. The residents behaved strangely, bound to invisible rules. And at the center of it all was Betty, Braun's chosen avatar. Here, Braun revealed his control, subjecting the wanderer to the same twisted games he had inflicted on the others. He demanded cruelty, demanded that the wanderer participate in his sadism. But unlike his other captives, the wanderer had a choice. Breaking the cycle. Braun offered one solution: obey. Carry out his instructions, commit the atrocities he demanded, and only then would he consider releasing James. But there was another path, hidden within the simulation. The wanderer could uncover the Chinese invasion program, an override within Tranquility Lane's code. When activated, the peaceful suburb was transformed into a battlefield, with squads of simulated Chinese soldiers sweeping through the neighborhood and slaughtering its inhabitants. For Braun, this was a humiliation. His perfect world was shattered, his control undone by the very system he had designed. With the program executed, Braun had no choice but to release the Wanderer and James from the simulation. They awoke back in Vault 112, free at last. But the tragedy remained. The other residents of Vault 112 were still trapped in their pods, bound to Braun's control. Their torment did not end that day. 112's legacy. Vault 112 is remembered, not for its role in rebuilding humanity, nor for its contribution to survival in the post-nuclear world. Instead, it stands as a monument to obsession and cruelty. Its existence highlights the darkest extremes of Vault-Tec's experiments. Other vaults pushed people to their limits through starvation, social engineering, or exposure to FEV. Vault 112 did something worse. It stole the very concept of freedom, of reality itself. Its residents were not starved or poisoned. They were robbed of choice, forced to exist in a false world forever, at the whim of a single man who saw himself as a god. Even compared to the horrors of Vault 11, Vault 22, or Vault 87, Vault 112 occupies a unique position in the pantheon of tragedy. It is not remembered for death in the physical sense, but for endless psychological torment. The story of Vault 112 asks a chilling question. What is the cost of control? For Braun, the answer was everything. He controlled life, death, morality, and reality itself. His experiment was not about testing humanity, but about satisfying his own God complex. It also reflects a broader theme within Fallout, the tension between illusion and reality. In a world destroyed by nuclear fire, is an artificial paradise preferable to the wasteland? For Braun's captives, the question was meaningless, because the choice was never theirs. The lone wanderer's actions in Tranquility Lane echo this theme. To obey Braun is to perpetuate his cruelty. To resist is to unleash destruction within the simulation, proving that the only way to end tyranny is to break the system itself. Yet even then, true freedom for the residents remains out of reach. Vault 112 reminds us that the greatest dangers of technology are not the machines themselves, but the people who wield them. Vault 112 was not a sanctuary. It was not designed to protect humanity from nuclear fire. It was a prison, built for the amusement of one man who believed himself a god. Hidden beneath an unremarkable garage, it became one of the most terrifying vaults in the entire program, a place where reality itself was stolen and twisted into a nightmare of endless control. The tragedy of Vault 112 is not that its people died. It is that they lived without living, trapped in illusions, denied their identities, their histories, their futures. Unlike other vaults, where the inhabitants struggled, fought, or perished, Vault 112's residents were reduced to nothing more than dolls in Braun's endless play. Even when the lone wanderer left, even when Braun was humiliated within his own simulation, the truth remained. Vault 112 was a tomb not of bodies, but of souls. A reminder that humanity's greatest horrors are not wrought by radiation or mutation, but by its own capacity for cruelty. Vault 112 endures as one of Vault-Tec's most haunting legacies, a place where paradise was a lie and reality belonged to one man alone.